Hello, Somerville. Back, different studio, but it's still Art at Scat. Still an exciting art show, and I get to meet fabulous artists. This one even has a fabulous name to go with her artwork. Her name is Sallie Strand. That's a theater name. Well, it's other kinds of names too we discussed, but that's a theater name. But it's also a painter name. You have created like wonderful, wonderful art. And you're from Joy Street Studios, and I happen to be perusing through, it's always that weird thing, and I saw your work, and I was in awe of it. I just love the color, the vibrancy, the way you use lines. So welcome. Welcome for coming.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
It's just, yeah, your work just blew me away. It is fun, and even though it's a lot of activity, it's calming, and it could be your palette, I'm not sure, but whatever your magic is, Sallie Strand, then you need to keep using it. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, like how did you come to paint, and was painting your first choice, or?
Actually, it wasn't. Funny enough, I never thought I was artistic because I couldn't draw. And so I was creative in lots of other ways. I actually was a pastry chef for a long time. I have a culinary degree. And then from there I became a dietitian. And then there's no creativity really at all in that. And so I sort of started painting as a hobby. And I come from a family of painters. My uncle was a painter, my father was a painter, and my mother was in interior design. So maybe that's where the color palette comes from too. But after I took my first painting class, I was hooked. And I actually started out in acrylics. And then I did a little bit of collage. And then I took an art class out at Castle Hill in Truro on the Cape. With Lisa Pressman, who is now become a friend of mine, and we used oil sticks, and I got hooked on the oil sticks. So all of these are made with oil sticks.
I have to ask you, going back to your background, did you were you part of your family's studios? Did you go in and out, or no kids allowed, or did they include you in some of the things that they were doing?
My dad actually, before Pictionary was even a thing, for our birthday parties, he used to be drawing pictures, and we'd all have to guess what it was. So he did a lot of pop art, and, so we always were sort of in and out of his studio in our basement. So that was a lot of fun.
Did both parents have studios in the house?
My uncle did too, but he lived in New Jersey, so we didn't see it as much.
Oh, okay. And then you said your mother
She does interior design.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yes.
So she got to move the furniture around upstairs.
Right.
And then he got to go downstairs.
Right. And there's always, swatches of different materials all over the place. So.
And then you landed up with food.
Yeah.
That is so great. A chef. I mean, a baker. No, more like
I went into baking. I learned how to do it all, but I went into baking.
See?
My aunt and uncle had a chain of gourmet food stores in Connecticut, so.
Woman has connections. I love that. I love that.
It's funny, actually. When it came time to sell my first painting, people were saying, is that going to be hard for you? And I said, it's actually a lot like baking, because you bake and it's sort of a nurturing thing, and it's to give pleasure to other people and to bring joy to them. And to me, that's sort of the same thing as art. It's happy to have a home, and this, lasts, and it doesn't make you fat.
It does. You just look there and go, that's what my calories would have looked like.
Right.
But instead, they're on my wall.
There you go.
And the work is very expressive. Now, you said you worked with oil sticks, so I know that
yes,
you brought
I actually brought some oil sticks. These are my favorite. There's a couple different brands, I guess, but my favorite, and the ones actually I've only used, are for RNF pigment sticks. And the pigment is actually suspended in beeswax and linseed oil. So you can draw with it, or you can chop it up. And I don't use brushes, so I usually use scrapers, or I make marks on wax paper and then transfer it onto the painting.
Oh, so you don't put it directly onto the canvas?
Sometimes I do, and then I use like maybe a squeegee or a scraper and spread it around that way. or I draw on something, and then, you know, once it gets really wet, because it stays wet, and then if it's really wet and you start working in it, you'll just create mud. So that's when I would go in and transfer a mark on there with something else.
Oh, that's good to know, because a lot of people would go to the mud part. 'Cause
Right.
even with watercolor, I've never been able to do that. 'Cause,
Yeah, it's tricky.
yeah, mine always looks like gouache, and
Yeah,
it's-
mine,
yeah,
I
it just
yeah,
doesn't.
I've attempted oil watercolor, and that was
Doesn't
not
work. See, so it's a process of finding the materials that work for
that
you,
work for you. Yes, yes.
and then you created these.
And you can use oil. You can mix oil paint with it. So it is oil. So you can mix regular oil paint with it. You can use brushes if you want.
Can you also do acrylic with it?
You can only use acrylic if you start at the base layer. You can't put acrylic on top of oil.
Okay. And how long does it take to dry?
Different colors take different amounts of time to dry, but it takes a long time. And
Like oil.
yeah, just like oil.
And this time of right now we're in the end of summer about, and so when it gets humid, I would imagine it takes an extra long time.
Yep.
So we don't want any hate mail for those of you that are going to try this, because we don't want you to, say, well, you didn't tell me, because I know that can be a big problem,
Right.
especially for beginners.
Yes.
You get very impatient. But you've created wonderful, wonderful images.
Thank you.
I'm going to reach around here, and if you could tell us, this one is Breaking Barriers.
Breaking Barriers. So this is part of a new collection that I've done, a new series, and I was fascinated with the Tibetan flag. And the Tibetan flag, somebody was telling me about the sort of the history behind it, and I didn't really realize that they're all a prayer, and you hang them, and when the wind blows, it sends the prayers out into the universe. And essentially they're prayers for everybody, and they're sort of ubiquitous. They're everywhere. And I thought that was such a great idea. So I sort of combined that idea with the idea of trying to manifest whatever you want in your life. And so I was, thinking about, now that my kids are all out of the house, and, I've been a single mom for a long time, it's time to manifest a relationship. So I sort of was thinking about all the things that I wanted in a relationship, and with the idea of the prayer flag. And so I wrote all different things and all in this whole series, and you can't necessarily see the words, but words like joy, adventure, passion, compassion, abundance, happiness, things like that are in the paintings. So you might see some scribbles, some scratches, you might see a letter here and there, but they're not there. And I figure when the paintings all go out, there'll be a prayer for everybody, not just for me. So.
Wow, that's a very strong concept.
Thank you.
And it's a beautiful concept. And for anyone that's doing those dating sites.
Yes, which is the challenge.
This could be wonderful. But the palette and the idea of the prayer going out continuously is, I didn't realize that about the Tibetan.
I know, isn't it great?
Prayer
flags.
Prayer flags. Wow, prayer
It's a tongue twister.
I know. But it's beautiful. And you captured that.
Thank you.
Now, do you make your own frames, though?
I do not. Sometimes I have a friend that makes some, and sometimes I get them just from local art stores.
So this is on wood?
I prefer to work on wood because I'm using like squeegees and scrapers, and it needs to be harder. The canvas has too much give to it.
So this is the kind of material that you'd use? It comes pre-put together?
Yep, it comes pre-put together. I gesso them, which is just an acrylic paint that seals it. If you didn't want to use gesso, you could use cold wet. There's clear gesso that has a clear color so that you might see the wood come through. So that's another way you could do it.
Would you mind if I flip this to the back just so they can see?
Sure.
Okay, I just want those of you who are thinking of experimenting, this is the kind of wood that you would use so that the paint stick would adhere.
Yes.
That's always very important, because if someone starts to experiment, it's good to know that. It looks like a musical note. I'm looking at the yellow over here.
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. And then we have this one, which is very exciting.
Now this one was part of an earlier series, so it's not part of that same series that that I'm gonna call Mantra. The other series I'm gonna name Mantras, but this is just from an earlier series. I think this one you can really tell how the squeegee came into play. You know, just putting a lot of paint in and then using a squeegee, and it sort of has that sort of smearing kind of look to it, and sometimes that way, sometimes that way. And there's lots and lots of layers. So part of the process too is adding layers, scraping away, you know, revealing, covering up, revealing, sort of building history to it.
Can I run my hands over it?
Sure, it's dry.
Because you don't feel that much layering. It sort of sits, it's like magical.
Yeah.
Because you would think that there would be layers like with acrylic, and it's relatively smooth, which is a nice...
Yeah, I mean, you can see, I don't know if it comes on camera, but there are, like, especially right here, there's a bunch of texture. You know, there's some texture here.
But they can come and see it.
They can come
That's
and see
right.
it.
In
yes.
September, you're going to be here.
We'll be having a reception.
So people can check this out. These are really exciting paintings.
This series that this came from, an earlier series, all sort of reminded me of looking out of a window. Maybe there's mist on the window, and it, you know, it's sort of the cityscape, and it's a little misty, so it's a little not clear. But
and it has sort of, I keep saying this because quite a few artists I find do it. It sort of has a vintage, like a 60s type of feel to it, like when the city looked that simple before skyscrapers and everything else. It's like an old school, but like 60s
back to
mod.
a simpler time, yes.
Where you could see the buildings. And the way you built up the depth and used lines and the transparency it gives it depth.
Thank you. Yeah, and some of them are just happy accidents.
A lot of stuff comes out from those accidents. And if you don't mind reaching.
We'll go to this one. And this one I called Awakening Adventure. And this one, it's still part of that prayer series or the mantra series. And this one felt like an adventure to me. It just, sort of the colors of an adventure. And so this one has a lot of layers. I think as I'm getting more, the longer I've been painting, the more depth the paintings are getting. So there's a ton of layers in this. I mean, you can see over here, there's lots of scraping back, and it's revealing a lot of the colors that have been underneath. There's a lot more texture, a ton of texture going on here. And part of that too is, I think one of the challenges, you know, painting is hard. It's not, it's fun, but it's hard. And sometimes you get completely stuck. And, you know, when that happens, I've painted over the whole painting and said, okay, you know, let's sort of pretend that it's a brand new palette. And then the cool thing about that is when you scrape away, like if you use a razor blade or I use some tools that you might use for sculpting and scrape back the layers, and you get this surprise because you forget over time what has been underneath it. So you get some really fun colors popping out, and then it just sort of creates this whole new dynamic to the painting.
And the scraping creates its own texture.
Yep.
So that it's not always smooth. You get a real surprise with the texture. Now, how did you get? It almost looks like you took a brush and did the feathering of the brush with the paint. You know what I mean? Because it's so consistent.
Actually, it's really rough here, and I had some red. Sometimes what I do too is I tend to work on, you know, a bunch of paintings at a time. And at the end of the day, when I'm ready to clean up and go home, if I have some paint left over, you know, you never want to leave paint because it's expensive.
Yeah.
So I just sort of look around and see what could use a little pop of color. And so I had some paint on wax paper, and I just actually rubbed it there, and that's how that mark came.
It's because it's wonderful. And then the straightness of the black line, it draws you in, but it's off to the side, so it doesn't, it's not centered. To me, this looked like a map also of some state, because with all it looked like water.
Yeah, it does. And maybe that's part of why I called it. It felt like an adventure to me, yeah. And that is that's also one of the things that my mantra in my prayers was travel, because I really want to do a lot of traveling, so.
Well, you've captured it.
Maybe that's subliminal in there.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
And now we're going to do, this one is Captivated?
Captivated, yeah. So this is also from the mantra series. It's funny, I a lot of times when people come into open studios, you hear lots of different comments of what people say, and a lot of times when people see abstract, they try to find a figure in it, or they try to, sometimes people are uncomfortable with it just being abstract, but I think
they read into you, like your psyche.
Well, they try to find a person, or they try to find a thing in there that they can say, oh, that's an alien, or whatever they might find, and that's one of the things I love about abstract is it, depending on your mood or whatever's going on in your life, you might see something different in the painting, so it can change from day to day. But a friend of mine said, he saw lips and smoke coming out, so.
Had he given up smoking?
Yeah, I smoked as a teenager, but haven't, I have not smoked for a long time, thankfully. So, I don't know, I just thought I think it's a lot of fun.
So when you're
trying to see if I can see any words here that I can point out.
But it's not a story you're
There's some words here, you can see a couple letters here that aren't completely hidden, but you can't really, I don't recall what I actually wrote there, but you can definitely see some letters in there, and there's lots of scraping in here. Sometimes I write the word and then sort of scrape so that, to hide it. But this one has a lot of scraping and a lot of detail if you see it up close that might not come on camera.
So you're not going for a particular image. It's more of is it more of an emotional when you're working?
It is. People ask me what goes, and I can go through, I usually listen to music, and, it brings up different things. So sometimes I'm even crying when I'm painting, but not necessarily sad. I can go straight from that into like dancing around the room. So, and because the paintings aren't done in one session, there's layers of emotion in there. So you don't really know what's going to come out.
So just so people can get an idea, you have several easels set up? Is that?
I actually
or are you
work
working
flat. I
Okay.
actually work flat. Yeah.
So you have tables, which I love tables that you can, and then you have your these blank. I want to say canvases, but they're not. But blank.
Well, they're wood canvases.
Okay,
yeah.
wood canvases, and then you lay them out on the tables, and then you're just working between them.
I do, and then I have strips of wood across my studio with nails in them, and so then I can hang them, and they can be any they can move around on that way, so that you can sort of step back, because it's hard to look down at them, so you can step back and
I
look
like
at them
that
that
idea.
way. And my iPad is great too. I take pictures, and I like to take pictures as I go on to see how they change. But also, if you look at it on your iPad, you can sort of go, oh, I don't really, like that, or if it feels imbalanced. There's lots of different things you can look at. You can see how it works or not works sometimes by getting more perspective that you might not have because you can't stand far enough away in your studio. All right, so we'll finish up with this, which is this one I called Cultivating Confidence. And this is sort of a different color palette for me. I'm usually...
Oh, let me just put this down, because all that confidence needs to show.
someone once remarked when they came to my studio that every single painting had some bit of green in it. So it was fun to try to work more just sort of a neutral palette. And I was sort of playing with the idea of, starting out with white, putting some black on, putting some white over the black, so you're creating the depth by which layer is coming first. I also like to add a little bit of metallic paint here and there. So this one has little bursts of some metallic paint. You can see some words here. Part of the word is covered up. I don't even know what it said, but this is also part of the mantra series too. And I think, I don't know, this huge black shape here just felt really confident to me, and I think that's what inspired the name.
And it centers the piece in a way.
Yeah.
And you play with your viewer. It's a nice relationship to have where they can go in, look at it, observe all the different textures. It makes you think, and you go in, you feel very close to the painting, and then you come out, and then you see something else, and then you got to go back in, and it's like, how did she do that? Where did that come from? What is that? I mean, I'm reading into, it's going to sound weird, but almost a face in here, and then lines. And everyone's going to see something different. In fact, when you're in an exhibit, you can ask them for each one, what do you see?
It's true. And sometimes, I've looked at a painting and then suddenly one day I look at it and I see that there's a shape in there that I never noticed before. So, it's funny what comes out when you're in your bliss and you're in your flow and you don't even really, it's sort of coming from the heart. You're not consciously saying, oh, I'm going to put a line over here. It just flows.
And it's always a surprise. I don't know about you, but it is a surprise. I'm like, where did that come from? And it's like you're in your own zone.
Yes.
And it's like, I don't know, something touched me, and that's where that color went.
Yeah, you can feel like you had the most frustrating day painting, and then you show up to your studio the next day, and you're like, who did that? So it's a fun surprise, and it's not easy, but it's fun.
How did you come to your technique? When did you decide that this was going to be what you were going to do as an art, like this, that this became your voice for now?
It was that class that I took with my friend Lisa Pressman. I've taken tons of classes with her, so and I think it really reminds me of being a pastry chef, so it really resonated that way.
Food? Are you telling me food? You're the first artist that said food was it for me, Janet. That's where I went. You must have made great cakes. I can only imagine what they look like with this.
Well, I'll bring some to the reception. How about that?
Oh, did you hear that? There'll be a reception, people. We didn't even have to beg. She volunteered.
With some pastries.
And it's going to be fun. It's going to be energy. What's interesting is even though you use a blue palette, which is usually something that calms you, you've created all this interest and movement by using the color. You sort of defied why most people use blue as just calm yourself down. And it gets that energy going, and it makes you just really think. And again, before you were doing this, before you went to that class, what were your paintings looking like?
They were sort of more landscapey. So this has a little bit of that in it. Some of them still have a little bit of landscape in it, but that's the first class I took was an acrylic landscape class, so they had more of that feel to it.
And I was wondering, are there any words of inspiration that you can give people, because you've made an interesting journey, and you're smiling through the whole show, and so that says something about her energy, or the fact she's eating her own pastries, and that's sugar speaking. But any words that you can give, or any thoughts?
Well, I think I would say it doesn't matter. I mean, here I didn't think I could ever be an artist because I couldn't draw. So don't get stuck on what you think your own limitations are. Just take a class, experiment. You never know what can happen, and it's really just about having fun and expressing yourself. You never have to show anyone, but it's actually really rewarding, I think, when you do share your art with other people. So just stick to it. It can be frustrating, it can be fun, and it's a great way to express yourself.
I have a friend that's a painter also, and she's like, I don't know if I should tell my daughter to do this because it can be so frustrating, but she has that gift. So, well,
Stick to it.
you stick to it, literally stick to it. Here we go, bad pun. And I thank you, everybody, for letting us into your living room, dining room, wherever we are. I don't even want to know some of the spaces you might have let us into. But get out there. I want you to create art. You can do it. Look, you have inspiration. I'm always trying to tell you, you got to get out there, do it. If you have friends that aren't really friends, or they say, it's not that good, cut them from the holiday list. Don't invite them to dinner. Don't even buy them tea. Just like go with the people that you know will support you, because that's very important.
Definitely.
And then you'll find that voice, and no matter how it comes out, written word, if it comes out on canvas, on wood, whatever it is, you're going to find it. And join us every month. In fact, view this show several times, because you'll learn more and more as you go through this. And we're here for you. SCAT's here for you. Community access television is here for you. We get talented artists that are brave enough to get on the show and share their experience. And it's safe, and it's fun.
It's fun.
And I just can't say enough about everything. We have Jason over. You can't see him, but he's in charge of putting this together and giving me hints like shut up or go ahead and no more time, Janet. And he's really good about that. You keep this up, Jason, you could be in the will. But in all, I thank you every time that I'm in the show, and every time you watch us and tell friends about us, because you don't even have to live in Somerville. Thanks to technology, you can live anywhere and watch us and meet wonderful artists. These are the artists in Somerville. There are artists everywhere. And I thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
We were like soulmates almost on the phone.
Know,
we were like chatting away like crazy. So you get out there, people, and do some stuff and create.
And come see us in September for the opening reception.
Yep, and then stay around and stay, not that you can sleep here, but until the end of October too, you can still see it. So as I say every month, Assalamu alaikum, that's how I end each show, which means peace be to you. Thank you for bringing us here in your home. Thank you for being in the studio. Thank you, Jason, for direction. And until the end of October or November, when we come back. But keep us in anytime you get a headache or something, turn on the show. That's it. Anytime you're feeling someone said something mean, turn on this show, because you're going to feel a lot better.
Indeed.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.